My name is Isabel, and I am a medical student. Life as a medical student is busy and stressful, but it is also exciting. I live in a small dorm room near the university. Sharing this space with another person is not always easy, but it is part of the experience. My roommate, Sophie, is also a medical student. She is quiet and keeps to herself. At first, I thought this would make things easier, but it has been more complicated than I expected. Every day, I wake up early and get ready for my classes. I usually wear simple clothes like jeans and a sweater because I spend most of my day in the lab or library. Sophie is usually still in bed when I leave. She does not have a fixed routine, or at least it seems that way to me. Sometimes she comes back late at night, and other times she spends hours locked in the room, not saying a word. I have tried to start conversations with her, but they do not go far. She smiles politely and answers my questions, but it is clear that she prefers to keep her distance. I do not take it personally. People have their own way of dealing with life, especially in a demanding course like ours. Still, I cannot help but wonder about her. Our dorm room is small but cozy. There is a bunk bed in one corner, with Sophie on the top and me on the bottom. We have a shared desk, but Sophie rarely uses it. Instead, she likes to sit on her bed with her laptop. She has a few decorations on her side of the room, like pictures and a small plant, but nothing personal. It is strange. My side of the room is full of books, notes, and little reminders of home. One day, I noticed something unusual. Sophie received a large package, but she hid it under her bed without opening it. It is not the first time I have seen her do this. It made me curious, but I decided not to ask. Everyone has their secrets, and it is not my place to pry. Despite our differences, I try to make our shared space comfortable for both of us. I clean the room regularly and keep my things organized. Sophie seems to appreciate it, even though she does not say much. Living with someone so different from me is a challenge, but it is also a chance to learn. Sophie hesitated for a moment, then slowly began to explain. She told me that she had always felt the pressure to succeed, not just academically, but in every area of her life. Her parents had high expectations for her to become a doctor, and they had sacrificed a lot to get her into a prestigious university. But the reality of medical school had been much harder than she had expected. The long hours of studying, the exams, and the stress of keeping up with everything had started to take a toll on her. Sophie explained that she had taken a part-time job to help cover her expenses. Her family couldn't afford to give her extra money, and she didn't want to take out student loans. Modeling had seemed like an easy option. At first, it was just small gigs, like posing for local shops or advertising campaigns for student events. But soon, the opportunities grew, and the agency offered her better-paying jobs. She felt proud of herself for being able to support her own education. As she spoke, I could see the weight of her words. She had been keeping this secret from everyone, even her closest friends, because she didn't want to be judged. Sophie had built a wall around herself, trying to appear perfect, to live up to the image she thought everyone expected of her. She felt guilty for not being fully transparent about her life, but at the same time, she was afraid of what people might think. I listened carefully, understanding her pain. It was clear that she was doing everything she could to stay afloat, balancing school, work, and the pressure of meeting her parents' expectations. I reassured her that I wasn't judging her and that I respected her for working so hard to stay independent. Sophie looked relieved. She thanked me for being understanding and for not making her feel like a failure. I could tell that she had been holding on to this burden for a long time, and finally sharing it with someone made her feel lighter. Later that evening, I reflected on everything Sophie had shared with me. I realized that the pressure to succeed wasn't just something that Sophie faced. It was something many of us struggled with in different ways. University life, with all its challenges and expectations, can be overwhelming, but it's important to remember that we don't have to go through it alone. I was grateful that Sophie had trusted me enough to open up, and I promised myself that I would be there for her. We all have our own battles, and sometimes all it takes is a little support and understanding to make a difference. One afternoon, I came back to the dorm after a long day of classes and found a package on my desk. It was addressed to Sophie, but the delivery person must have mistaken my desk for hers. Sophie was not in the room, so I decided to leave it there for her. However, as I was about to place it on her bed, the box slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. The corner of the package tore slightly, revealing something shiny inside. I picked it up quickly, feeling embarrassed, even though no one was watching. My curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced at the exposed item. It was a silver bracelet with delicate stones that sparkled in the light. It looked expensive, not something you would expect a medical student to have lying around. I carefully placed the package on Sophie's bed and tried to ignore what I had seen. Later that evening, Sophie returned to the dorm. She greeted me with a small smile and saw the package on her bed. For a moment, she looked nervous, her hands hesitating before picking it up. I could not stop myself from asking, "Is everything okay?" Sophie paused, then nodded quickly and thanked me for taking care of her package. Her response was polite, but her expression told a different story. The next few days, I noticed more unusual behavior. Sophie left the room early in the morning and came back late at night, sometimes carrying shopping bags. She seemed more withdrawn than usual, barely making eye contact. My mind kept returning to the bracelet and the packages she received regularly. I wondered if she was hiding something serious. One night, curiosity overwhelmed me. Sophie was out, and I sat at my desk, staring at the empty room. I felt guilty even thinking about invading her privacy, but I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. I reminded myself that Sophie was my roommate, not my responsibility, and decided to wait for her to come back instead. When Sophie finally returned, I worked up the courage to ask her directly. I said, "Sophie, I hope this is not too personal, but is everything all right? You seem very busy lately." Sophie froze for a moment, then sighed deeply. She sat on her bed and looked at me, her expression a mix of hesitation and relief. That was when she began to explain everything. Sophie sat on her bed, holding the package she had brought in earlier. She stayed quiet for a few moments, her fingers tracing the edge of the box. I waited patiently, unsure of what to expect. Finally, she took a deep breath and began to speak. She told me she had been working as a part-time model for the last year. At first, I thought I had misunderstood her, but she repeated it, her voice calm but tinged with a hint of nervousness. Sophie explained that the packages she received were clothes, accessories, and other items sent by the agency she worked for. I listened as she described how she started modeling to help pay for her tuition and other expenses. Her parents could not afford to support her fully, and scholarships only covered part of the cost. She wanted to stay independent and avoid taking out large loans, so when someone suggested she try modeling, she decided to give it a chance.
It was not easy, she said.
Balancing her studies with her modeling assignments was exhausting. Some days, she had to wake up at 4 a.m. for a photo shoot and then rush to class afterward. Other times, she worked late into the night, posing for catalogs or advertisements. She confessed that the secrecy was the hardest part. Sophie had not told anyone at school about her job. She worried that people would judge her or think she was not serious about her studies. Even her family did not know the full extent of her work. The bracelet I had seen earlier was part of a campaign she had modeled for, and she had been nervous about keeping it in the dorm. I felt a mix of emotions as I listened. On one hand, I admired Sophie's determination and hard work. On the other hand, I felt bad for making assumptions about her. I told her that I understood why she had kept it a secret and assured her that I would not tell anyone. Sophie smiled faintly and thanked me. For the first time, she seemed more relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. I realized how much she had been carrying on her own and felt grateful that she trusted me enough to share her story. From that moment, something changed between us. Sophie was no longer just my roommate. She was someone I deeply respected. After that night, the atmosphere in our dorm changed. Sophie and I began talking more, sharing bits of our lives that we had kept hidden before. She told me about her struggles with time management, her dreams of becoming a surgeon, and her fear of failing both as a student and as someone trying to support herself. I shared my own worries about exams, the pressure to succeed, and how overwhelming medical school could feel at times. One weekend, we decided to spend a day studying together. I thought it would be a good opportunity to help Sophie organize her schedule, something she admitted was a challenge for her. We wrote down all her classes, assignments, and modeling commitments on a big calendar. Seeing everything laid out helped her feel more in control. At the same time, I learned a lot from Sophie. She showed me how to stay calm under pressure and reminded me to celebrate small victories. When I aced a quiz the following week, she surprised me with a chocolate bar and said, "You worked hard. You deserve this." It was such a simple gesture, but it meant a lot to me. Sophie also encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone. One evening, she invited me to join her on a casual photo shoot in the park. At first, I felt nervous and out of place, but watching her confidence inspired me. She even convinced me to pose for a few photos, which turned into a fun memory we laughed about later. Looking back, I realized how much I had learned from Sophie. Her determination, resilience, and ability to balance so many responsibilities were things I admired deeply. It made me think about how everyone around us has their own story, their own challenges, and their own ways of coping. If you're listening to this story, think about someone in your life who might be carrying more than they show. Maybe it is a classmate, a coworker, or even a stranger. Take a moment to ask them how they are doing. You might be surprised by what you learn and how much a simple conversation can change things. Sophie and I are still roommates, and our friendship continues to grow. Living with her taught me that understanding and empathy are some of the most important lessons in life. Just like in medicine, where we learn to care for patients, we can also care for the people around us. And sometimes all it takes is a little curiosity and a lot of kindness.